It's time now to implement that predator system. Predator system is my smart speed hack for enemies. Make them move faster to kill your ass based on where they are and how they're moving. When there's a general overview for that video, it'll be linked below and you can learn about how it all works. We need to implement it though into this game. It's game neutral code, but we need to have an initiation point for it. So that means we need to find the area where the movement offset is being calculated for enemy movement. That can be quite tricky to find. It's sometimes, many times, very far removed from where the actual right to the enemy chords are. Most of the time I find it, and we're gonna try to do that today. But first of all, we have to find out where the general right function is for coordinates. Unfortunately, I believe that there might be separate systems for enemy coordinates versus player coordinates. That's because I looked and I was checking out what the right function for my coordinates were, and I noticed that my coordinates were the only ones being written to in that. So here are my coordinates. I'm gonna see what writes to my coordinates. Okay, nothing yet. Let's move the character around. This function is apparently responsible for updating my coordinates. Let's see what else this updates though. You can see here, unfortunately, that it's only updating my coordinates. Now there are some enemies down below there that are moving around, and so I know there should be more coordinate updates going on. So unfortunately, it appears that there's a separate movement function for enemies, unfortunately. Now I know there's humanoids in this game too, so maybe they might use this right here. So we might have to implement the predator system twice, but I don't know. Hopefully they use whatever this, four-legged creature's using down there. I think they're 4 legs, whatever, the machines. So one way I know that I could get additional enemies was by going through some polling functions, accessing my health. Unfortunately, I did find some enemy structs, but I wasn't able to find their actual sourced coordinates from there. The source of truth, the actual coordinates where if you change it, that's where they'll move to. It's the real deal, not a calculated value. Usually in games we can find enemy coordinates by looking at what accesses our coordinates, like this. We can see there's a lot of functions going off here. Fortunately, all of these functions just read my coordinates. A lot of times it'll read not only my coordinates, especially the one that's being accessed a lot here, but it'll read everything's coordinates. And so, unfortunately, I could not find enemy coordinates that way, so we had to do the pain in the butt way of figuring out enemy coordinates, and that's by going right up next to them, and then getting right next to them, and then choosing a particular coordinate here that is mine or equal to, and then searching for the enemy coordinates in a particular range, value between. So let's say we want to do the y coordinate, it would be minus 5810, and then minus 581582. Because it's not going to be exactly what my coordinates are, because they are standing a little bit apart from me. And then I would move around a bit, like so. Let's go over here. Wait for him to come over here. It's very annoying because he's not going to want to come. He wants to blind me first. Very fun, very fun. So mine went to minus 1580 here, so I would maybe search for minus 1579 to minus 1583 or so. Big pain in the butt. Unfortunately, this yielded no results either. And that's when I determined, after looking through the enemy character structs a bit, that enemies don't use floats for their coordinates, they use double, which is interesting. That we use floating point for the player, but we use double for the creatures. There's a whole number of reasons why I guess that might be the case, but eventually we found, I found this guy's coordinates right here. It's a double, and we can prove that it's his coordinates by locking him into place. So I'm gonna freeze him in place right here. So he can't really move, right? He's stuck, it keeps on resetting his values there. So those are his coordinates. And so using that, I could figure out by looking at what writes to it, what his movement right function is. And here's his movement right function, right here, this guy. And we can prove that it's a movement right function because if I replace the code with something that does nothing, he can no longer move. See, he's stuck in place. So that was a big pain in the ass, and I didn't include that in the video because you'll just have to take my word on it. That's what I did. Okay, so now that we have the movement update function, we need to figure out where the maths are being calculated. That is, we need to figure out where the offsets are. If I put a breakpoint in here for this guy here, let's see, the RSI value is what's being used to find to access his coordinates. And let's have a condition here, RSI equals this. Currently his X and Y, X is 2577185, and Y is this down there. It's going to update this to this 2577.19, right? That's the new coordinate. Okay, and this is probably rounded up, so it's probably going to be a smaller difference than that. But that's the new coordinate, and the predator system enhances or buffs, boosts the offsets. And these aren't the offsets, these are the new coordinates. We need to figure out what's being added to the current one to get this one. That's the best place to insert in a movement speed enhancing code, because that way anything else that depends on that update occurring to that X coordinate, and there's potentially hundreds of things that depend on that, special effects that are going on around it, you know, other parts of its body, etc. They will also then correctly be updated with that change. If I do a dirty little speed hack here, which is I take the difference between the new value and the old value, and that might work, but a lot of times in more advanced games, it's not going to work right. Weird things are going to happen. Really, the best place is to find the place where it's taking the current coordinates and then adding some offset to it to get the new coordinates down here. So how do we figure out what that is? Well, one way I do to do that is we have it updating right here. It's about to update it. And here's its X coordinate right here. And I'm going to see what's accessing it. Okay? I want to see what accesses it in between this update and the next update. And one of those accesses is going to be used in the calculation to find the new coordinates, because when we have a movement offset, we need to know what to add it to. So I'm going to hit run here, and I thought the game crashed, but it didn't. It scared the hell out of me. And we can see all these accesses to it. So what I do is I like to work from the bottom up, because it should be, hopefully, a lot of times it's the last access or near the last access that's used in the calculation. Okay? So here's the very, very last access to that X coordinate here. And I can tell that it's actually very, very close to the right, too close. And it looks like it's just comparing what's probably the new value to the old one, and then, I don't know, doing something different if it's equal and not equal. I don't think there's going to be any math going on here, because it jumps down here and then it writes it. So let's go one up here and look at this guy here. So if we look at this guy here, it's reading my current coordinate, and there's a whole bunch of crap going on. Too much crap going on. I don't see any, I see something down here, but I don't see any immediate arithmetic operation going on. And the best way is to figure out what's going on here is to do a trace. So here's a trace here. I'm gonna do 5,000 instruction count here, and we have to have a star condition, otherwise it's gonna go off for something else. So for this instruction right here, what's the discriminator here? It's RDI again, and it needs to equal this. So we're going to do a break and trace instruction. RDI equals OX that, right there. So I'm gonna hit OK here, and then we're gonna let it run into the next update, and we're gonna see what the results are. So here's a trace right here, and then it's reading the current X coordinate to XMM0. We can see 2600.03. That's the current one, and let's see. Let's try to find from here where the right function is, and hopefully I can just eyeball that. Here's where the right's happening, and as you can see here, there's a difference, 2600.02. That means somewhere in between the read of 2600.03 and this write, we come to 2600.02. So we might be able to find the maths from here. So I'm just gonna scroll down here and see when I start to see some operations occurring between this value right here, the 2600.03, to get 2600.02. I'm gonna basically stop the very first time I see 2600.2, which is the new value. There's a sub-function here. Seeing a lot of math going on over here. Nothing going on in that sub-function apparently. Let's look over here. All right, I'm seeing 2600.02 here. This is the very first time we see it. And it looks like right here, the very first time I see it is right here, after this add, this double add. So it's adding into the XMM6 register, which is where I see it, XMM0 plus RSP plus D0. That RSP plus D0, I'm going to assume, is on the stack and it contains our current X coordinate. That's why I guess it can be very tricky, because you see it doesn't just immediately do the calculation right with the sourcing the X coordinate. It takes the X coordinate, it stores it somewhere on the stack, and then uses it later. So it can be very tricky to find the exact spot here. That's why you a lot of times have to do a trace. But basically, XMM0, as you can see here, is negative 0.01. This is our offset right here, and that gets added to here. And then it looks like the offset's stored in XMM1 here for the Y coordinate here, because that's our Y coordinate now, and then same for the Z coordinate. So it looks like we're gonna be injecting into the code right here. Let's take a look at it. Here's that code right here, and let's put a breakpoint in there, and then hopefully I can look at my trace right here, and let's look at our trace, and we can see that RDI is what it was when the breakpoint was hit, at the very top of this. So that's the target enemy coordinate struct. So I can just use the same breakpoint then, right? Let's do RDI. Okay. Okay, this was hit. Okay, you can see some movement happening now. Oh, it's going to add 0.02 to the RSP plus D0. Let's see what RSP plus D0 is. RSP plus D0 is 257719. It's actually rounded up though. It is this value right here, and that is, looking at my coordinates over here, that is the X coordinate for the enemy. Great, very good. So these are doubles. The predator function kind of expects to work with floats, so we might have to do some conversions here, but let's see where these come from. It looks like XMM0 comes from RSP plus 40. This is the X offset. XMM1 down here is the Y offset, and 0 is used as a Z offset, correct? Yes. Let's take a look at RSP plus 40 here. So it looks like it's converting it from float to double here. So we can use that as a movement offset array, or however you will, for the predator function. Let's look at the floats here. And so yeah, we can see it right here, 0.02 movement offset for X, negative 0.02 for Y, and then nothing for the Z. So in the predator function, we can just source these values for the movement offset, and we can just update those values on the stack for the X, Y, and Z movement offsets. So we probably want to actually hook into right here, and this is where everything's going to happen. We have everything we need here. RDI is the enemy's location struct. I think RDI plus 120 is X, and because it's a double, 128 will be Y, and then 130 will be Z. We're going to need to convert those to float though for the predator function. That shouldn't be a big deal. We'll just do that directly and then throw them on the stack. And yeah, this is where it's going to be. If I update the RSP plus 40, plus 48, plus 44, then that will be essentially updated movement offsets for the creature. And this is where we're going to throw in the predator function. Let's do that. All right, guys, here is the beginning of our predator initiation point implementation in our Omnified HCD hack. This code right here is what we were just looking at, and it is right around where the game is about to apply a movement offset to a creature's coordinates. And then it will commit those coordinates into the creature's coordinate location in memory. We have some notes that we took about the code here, and where we can find some data that we're going to need. The target enemy coordinates can be found where RDI is pointing to, and an offset of 120 will give us the X, 128 will be Y, and 130 will be Z. Now they're so far spread apart so far because these are not floats, they're actually doubles. We typically work with floats when we're doing coordinate stuff, and indeed the player's own coordinates are floats. But for whatever reason, the enemy's coordinates are not, they're doubles. And one thing I still need to see is if other humans in the game are also floats, or they too are doubles and they will use the same function. I hope that they do use the same function, but we'll find out later. So in this game, it's a little bit strange where we're going to be sourcing the movement offset from. They're actually stored in float form at RSP plus 40 for the X, 44 for Y, and 48 for Z. And the code basically reads from these places in the stack, and it's going to convert them to double and then basically add them to whatever the current coordinates are. So if we get to them right here in the stack and with our updated float values, then the game will use those updated values. So the output of this function will be writing to this area in the stack. So because we have to source it from somewhere in the stack, we're gonna have to do a little bit of stack math, because when we back up all the data that we need to back up, push all the registers to the stack, it's gonna obviously move where these are. Let's begin to write the code then. The first thing we wanna do is we wanna make sure we back up our conditional flags, because we're gonna be doing mini comparisons, and we don't wanna screw up stuff for the game. Do a push F there, pop F there. Then one of the parameters for the predator function is the player's own coordinates. So we need to make sure that the coordinates have been initialized by the player coordinate hook that we have. So let's back up REX here. We need to have that to hold the player coords address. We're gonna move to REX, the player coords address. We're gonna dereference the player coords and see if it's been set to point to something or not. If it is equal to 0 there, then that means it has not been initialized yet. And we will exit out of the code here. Otherwise, let's start backing up all the data we're gonna need and start getting the parameters together. Then we just gotta push those parameters to the stack, call the predator function, process the return arguments, and we're done. The game will then be omnified in that aspect then, and enemies will be moving super fast. So typically we're gonna need a few SSC registers backed up just so we can work with them, just to hold some values and do some operations on. So let's back up 3 separate SSC registers. We're gonna back up first the XMM0 register. Give room for 16 bytes for each one. We'll back up the XMM1 register next, and 16 more bytes, and we will back up the XMM2 register. Then at the very bottom here, we'll restore these values. Restore XMM2 first, restore the stack. We'll restore XMM1, and restore the stack, and then we will restore XMM0, and restore the stack there. So the output of the predator function is stored in the REX, RBX, and RCX registers. So we're gonna need to back those up here because those will be overwritten by our execute predator function call. Let's back up REX, RBX, and RCX. And then we'll restore those here in the order that we push them, or the opposite order, rather. All right, well, so as you can see here, we've manipulated the stack quite a bit. We're storing a bunch of values onto it. And we're gonna be, obviously, as we pass parameters or arm parameters for the function call, we're gonna be putting more stuff on the stack. So let's grab the movement offset right now, which is on the stack. And as we said before, the movement offset can be found starting at RSP plus 40. However, it's no longer there, RSP plus 40 anymore here, because we've stored a bunch of other values onto the stack. So we just do some math here. Each one of these pushes is going to be 8 bytes, so that's 8, 16, 24. And then each one of these is going to be 16 more bytes. And then the push F here is going to be 2 bytes, I believe. So it's going to give us an offset of 4A, I believe. So then 40 plus 4A is 8A. So that's where this is going to be located now. So let's grab that right now and let's just throw it onto a spare SSC register. Let's just do a move unaligned values from that place in the stack and store it in XMM2. That's RSP plus 8A. So that'll store onto XMM2 the offset for XYZ in float form. Okay, well, we're gonna need our player card, so let's move the address of our player card pointer to REX, and then we'll dereference it. Store that into RBX. So our player cards can be found at RBX then. And then we're gonna need to get the enemy coordinates. This one's a little trickier than normal. The enemy coordinates are stored as doubles, not floats, so we're gonna have to convert them to float. So they can be found starting at RDI plus 120. So we're gonna use XMM0 here to do the conversions, and we're gonna convert from double to float. CBTSD2SS is what does that. We're gonna store them in XMM0, and RDI plus 120 is the X. Then we're going to move each value here onto the stack and then load it back onto an SSC register. Because the predator function expects the order of data to be as if you were pushing memory addresses onto the stack. Normally we would do push RDI plus 120 to get the X and Y pushed into the stack for reading as a parameter by the predator function, but we have to convert it first. You do push RDI plus 120, then you do push RDI plus 128, because this would push X and Y, and then this would push Z. Okay. Now if I take everything and put it onto an SSC register, and then I just dump that SSC register onto the stack, it'll be in an order that it doesn't expect it to be in. That's something I'm gonna maybe work on. I don't know, or maybe normalize this so that we don't have to know ahead of time what kind of input it takes. We'll make it more universal. So actually, let's make some temporary room on the stack right here. We're gonna make room for 16 bytes. And we converted the X to float. And we're going to then move that first X value to RSP, this new place in the stack we made room for. Then we're gonna convert the Y coordinate, put it in XMM0. That's gonna be located at RDI plus 128. We're gonna move that to the stack plus 4, so it'll be X and then Y. And then we're gonna do convert from double to float again, RDI plus 130 for the Z coordinate. And we're gonna store that at RSP plus 8, 4 bytes apart each. Okay, once that's all put onto the stack, I'm just gonna load it up into that XMM0 register. So then it's occupying all vectors. We're on a line to move there. So now XMM0 will contain X, Y, and Z, and then something else at the end of it. And we're going to restore the stack right here, of course. Now I'm going to do a move of the high words to the low words from XMM0, which contains the movement offsets, to XMM1. And then basically XMM1 will start with the Z coordinate. Okay, great. We have everything we need in order to start pushing the enemy's coordinates to the stack then. So Predator function can read them. Up here we have the player's coordinates ready to use. So let's just do this right up here. Right after we dereference the player coordinates, I'm going to push to the stack as a parameter, RBX plus 70, which is where the X coordinate is for the player, and the Y coordinate. And then we're going to push RBX plus 78, because this only pushes 8 bytes worth of data, right? So that's only going to push in the X and the Y, and then we need to push the Z as well. And then this is technically the first parameter then for the Predator system. After we prepare the XMM0 and 1 registers to hold the enemy's coordinates, we're not going to push those as parameters. To do that, we're going to allocate 8 bytes in the stack, and then we're going to move quad word, RSP, XMM0. This will move the 2 lower words then for XMM0, or X and Y. And then make room for 8 more bytes. Do another move quad word, and we'll move XMM1 to the stack. And then we'll just move the Z coordinate then. So then it's in the proper order that the Predator function expects. Next, the third parameter is the scale of the creature, and this really only matters if the game has true scale. That is, the larger you are, the bigger your leg span, and the faster you move naturally in the game. And I do not know if this game has true scale, because I'm going to have to implement the scaling function in the game. I highly doubt it. The game doesn't have any built-in scaling parameters. I will have to build the scaling, and so I'm going to assume that it's not going to be a true scale then, and it doesn't matter. So we're just going to pass in an identity matrix of just once, basically. Let's allocate up here a symbol called identity value. An identity value just going to be a floating point value of 1.0. And then let's just clean it up down here. All right, and then that is the third parameter, the scales, the depth, height, and width. I don't know if that's the right order, but it doesn't matter because they're all ones. So we're gonna take that identity value we just declared, and we're gonna store that in XMM0. And then we're gonna broadcast that value so it occupies all vectors, all words of the SSE register. So it'll read 1, 1, 1, 1. I think that was 4 ones. We're gonna make room on the stack for 16 bytes. We're just going to dump that register onto the stack, and that's the third parameter. For the fourth parameter, that's the movement offset, and this has the same problem, very much the same problem that we had with the enemy coordinates, where we had the value stored on the SSE register, and we needed to push that SSE register to the stack. It needs to be in the correct order, the same order as if we were pushing memory addresses onto the stack. So we have to do very much the same thing. We stored the movement offset values in the XMM2 register. We're gonna move the high words from the XMM2 register and throw them where the low words are on the XMM1 register. So then the XMM1 register will start with the offset for the Z. We're gonna make room on the stack for 8 bytes, and we're going to move quad word onto the stack, XMM2, so we're dumping the X and Y offsets. Then we're gonna allocate or make room for 8 more bytes in the stack, and we're going to move quad word again, XMM1, which is the Z offset. And that's all the parameters for the Predator system. We'll have a general overview video for the Predator system eventually, and I will recommend you to check that out because it's interesting how it works. Then we call execute Predator. This is going to calculate what the actual movement offset should be. Typically they're going to be boosted, so they'll be moving faster. And it's going to store the results in the REX, RBX, and RCX registers. REX will contain the updated offset for X, RBX will be for Y, and then RCX for Z. So this should be pretty simple. The stack at this point right here should be the exact same as it was when this line of code went off, because calling this function will free up all that stuff that was pushed to the stack. And so RSP plus 8A should still be the area in the stack where it stores the X offset. So I'm just going to move to that place on the stack, RSP plus 8A, the value that's an EAX, the updated X offset. And then the Y offset will be 4 bytes away, so that's gonna be RSP plus 8E, and we're gonna move what's in the EBX, and then we're gonna do the same for the Z offset, which is 9.2. And then that's it. That is a complete implementation of a Predator initialization point for Horizon Zero Dawn, and this should result in creatures moving much faster and with the intent to murder us. Only other thing is I have a few configurable parameters that is stored in the Predator system. The Predator system can be found in my common include file that contains all my game neutral code. And in this game, the Z-axis is the vertical axis, so up or down. If I increase my Z, I will go up higher in the air. In most games, it's the Y-axis, and the default state of the Predator system is it expects that that Y is the vertical axis, and therefore we usually don't want to boost that one because it screws things up. And we have a parameter called skip boost Y, and we actually want that to be set to 0 here. We want to boost the Y because that's no longer the vertical axis in this game. So we just do skip boost Y here. It's already declared in that include file, and we just issue a directive of 0. And then there's another one where it's for skip boosting Z, and we actually want it to skip boosting Z here. We don't want to screw with the vertical movement. Otherwise, it'll just fall through the ground, basically. That's essentially what happens for the most part. And I believe that's it. This is in here. Let's see if it works, and then let's see what the game's like with the Predator system going. All right, we got the Predator system implemented in Horizon Zero Dawn, and it's working wonderfully. And let's take a look at what it looks like. First off, we're gonna have it turned off, and we're gonna see what the normal movement speed of enemies is by aggroing this pack of watchers up ahead. Then we'll look at it again with the Predator system on and see if we can spot the difference. So again, the Predator system is not enabled right now. Let's go aggro these weird guys up here and see how they move. Hello. Please attack me. You can see them slowly moving towards. That's a run right there. You can very easily outrun them. No problem at all. Ooh, a little bit of a dash there. Jump attack. So let's look at them a little bit longer so we can get a sense of the speed. They do vary their speed a little bit as they switch between attacks, dashing, and walking after us. See, I can leave them in the dust pretty easily. Pretty easily. I can run out of sight very easily. This Predator system is probably going to make the running away from part of the game a little bit harder. See, they're quite slow. So let's reload and turn on the Predator system and see how fast they are then. See if the game's a bit more challenging. All right, the Predator system has been enabled. And remember, the Predator system is a bunch of configurable values. We're using mainly default settings here. I've increased the threat range, which is where all the speed buffs are removed, and the aggro distance, which determines how large the area of aggro is. These are things that you don't know what I'm talking about. These are covered in the general overview video of Predator system, which does not exist yet, but will soon, okay? I did that because it seems like the value of a coordinate, if I move one coordinate in the X direction, it seems to be around half what it is normally for other games. So the enemies are going to be moving from anywhere between 2 times as fast to 6 times as fast plus as they get closer to us. So let's see what it looks like. We're going to aggro the same group of watchers. Let's see what they do. Let's see if you can tell that they're a bit faster now. Okay. Tell they are much faster, and they are zooming in on my location. Oh God, it's kind of hard to keep track of all of them. We are slightly blinded here for a little bit. Oh God, jeez. I was actually trying to avoid them first, and I'm not trying to avoid them now, and it's kind of difficult. Look at them zoom into me. Look at the speed, they can just zoom in, look at that. Look at that, zoom in for the kill. A great success. The Predator system is a great success in Horizon Zero Dawn. I can't wait to play it with these enemies on crack in it. As you can see, it's not only a speed hack, but it's a smart speed hack. They're not boosted when they shouldn't be. When they're about to close in for an attack, you don't want them boosted because they'll go way past you. Etc., etc., etc. well, looks like it's a success. So guys, the next thing we need to do, we're dead. For the game to make an Omnified is we need to implement that abounification system. The ultimate Omnified hack, which will change their shapes and sizes. We'll do that in the next video. And then when that's done, we can start streaming it. So, if you like the content, you have learned something, whatever, want to support what I'm doing, please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. Like the video, whatever you want to do. And if you want to catch the Omnified gameplay live, only one place you can do it, at twitch.tv/omni. I'll see you guys next time.